Imagine, if you will, the sweltering heat of a Southern California summer. It is 1985. The sun beats down on the asphalt of Los Angeles, baking the city in a thick golden haze. By day, the sprawling metropolis is a portrait of 1980s excess. Neon lights, booming industries, and the relentless pursuit of the American dream. But when the sun dips below the horizon and the shadows lengthen across the manicured lawns of the suburbs, a different reality sets in, a chilling, suffocating dread. The heat wave is oppressive, the kind that makes you want to throw open every window in the house just to catch a whisper of a breeze. But the people of Los Angeles are not opening their windows. They are locking them. They are deadbolting their doors, buying guard dogs, and emptying the shelves of local gun stores. Why? Because out there, in the velvet dark of the California night, something evil is hunting. Not a ghost, not a phantom, a flesh and blood monster who slips through unlocked windows and leaves behind a trail of unspeakable horror. A predator so unpredictable, so brazen, that the media will soon crown him with a moniker that will echo through the annals of dark history forever. The Night Stalker. But who is this shadow? Where did he come from? And how did a single man hold millions of people hostage in their own homes? Welcome back to Strange World with me, your host, Marshall Alessi. And today, we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most terrifying true crime cases of the 20th century. We are exploring the twisted path, the shocking investigation, and the dramatic, chaotic downfall of Richard Ramirez. So settle in, lock your doors, and let's dive into the dark. To understand the monster that terrorized Los Angeles, we first must travel east, across the blistering deserts of the American Southwest, to El Paso, Texas. It is here, in the shadow of the Franklin Mountains, that Ricardo Leyva Munez Ramirez is born on February 29th, 1960. He is the youngest of 5 children in a working-class family. On the surface, it might look like a standard quiet upbringing, but beneath the veneer of this El Paso home, the foundations are cracking. Richard's early life is a cocktail of instability and trauma. His father, Julian, is a former police officer from Mexico who rules the household with a heavy, often violent hand. The physical discipline is severe, leaving scars that are more than just skin deep. Young Richard, seeking an escape from the volatile atmosphere of his own home, begins to wander. Richard sleeps in local cemeteries, finding a twisted sense of peace among the silent graves. But the true turning point in his young life, the catalyst that would pull him definitively into the shadows, comes in the form of his older cousin, Mike. Mike is a Green Beret, a decorated veteran who has recently returned from the brutal jungles of the Vietnam War. To a young, impressionable Richard, Mike is a figure of awe and dangerous fascination. But Mike has not brought back tales of heroism. He has brought back demons. He regales his young cousin with gruesome stories of the atrocities he committed and witnessed during the war. He shows Richard Polaroid photographs of mutilated victims, boasting of the violence. Mike is teaching Richard a horrific lesson that human life is cheap and the power is taken through fear and brutality. The bond between the two reaches a catastrophic climax in 1973. Richard, just 13 years old, is present when Mike, in the middle of a heated argument, raises a gun and shoots his own wife point blank in the face, killing her instantly. The blood spatters across the young boy's face. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated horror. But for Richard, it is also a moment of dark initiation. The final thread tethering him to normal human empathy snaps. Following the murder, Richard spirals out of control. He drops out of high school. He begins heavily abusing drugs, particularly LSD and marijuana, and later, cocaine. His petty crimes escalate from shoplifting to burglary. He becomes a drifter, a phantom moving through the margins of society. By the late 1970s, the dusty streets of El Paso can no longer hold him. Richard turns his gaze westward, toward the glittering promise of California. When Richard Ramirez arrives in California, he is a man adrift. Fueled by addiction and a growing obsession with the occult, he immerses himself in Satanism, finding a dark philosophy that justifies his most depraved urges. He spends time in San Francisco before drifting down to Los Angeles. a city that offers endless targets for a transient burglar. He sleeps in cheap motels, often taking up residence at the infamous Cecil Hotel in downtown LA, a place with its own dark history, practically a magnet for lost souls and predators. His early days in California are marked by petty theft and drug possession. He is arrested, fingerprinted, and released, a minor nuisance to the overcrowded justice system. But the hunger inside him is growing. It is no longer just about stealing to feed a drug habit. It is about the thrill of the intrusion, the power of standing in someone's home while they sleep. The first known taste of blood comes not in Los Angeles, but in the foggy streets of San Francisco. It is April 1984. Mei Lang, a 9-year-old girl, is found brutally murdered in the basement of a residential hotel. The crime is horrific, a savage escalation that defies logic. For decades, her murder will remain a cold case, a tragic mystery. It won't be until 2009, through the miraculous advancement in DNA technology, that the evidence left at the scene will definitively link back to Richard Ramirez. But in 1984, the killer walks away, a ghost in the fog, his terrible secret safe. A few months later, the phantom strikes again, this time in the Glasso Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. Jenny Vincow, a 79-year-old woman, is found dead in her apartment. She has been brutally attacked, stabbed repeatedly in a frenzy of violence. The brutality of the crime scene shocks the seasoned detectives of the LAPD. But again, there is no clear motive, no forced entry that suggests a professional hit, and no obvious suspect. It is an isolated nightmare. Or so they think. The winter of 1984 passes into the spring of 1985. And then the true reign of terror begins. It is March 17th, 1985. The night is cool. In a condominium in Rosemead, California, 22-year-old Maria Hernandez pulls into her garage. As she steps out of her car, a figure steps from the shadows. A man, tall and gaunt, dressed in dark clothing, raises a gun. He fires. The bullet strikes Maria, ricocheting off the keys she has raised in a desperate attempt to shield her face. She falls to the floor, playing dead, her heart hammering against her ribs. The stranger steps over her, entering the home. Moments later, Maria hears a second gunshot. The intruder flees. When the police arrive, they find Maria's roommate, Dale Okazaki, dead from a gunshot wound. The city is just beginning to process the shock of the Rosemead shooting when the killer strikes again. Less than an hour later, Silene Yu, a 30-year-old law student, is pulled from her car in Monterey Park and shot twice. She later dies from her injuries. Two horrific incidents in one night. The police are scrambling. The ballistics match. They are looking for a lone gunman, but they have no idea of the scale of horror that is about to unfold. 10 days later, the nightmare morphs into something even more terrifying. In the quiet, affluent neighborhood of Whittier, Vincent and Maxine Cesara are asleep in their home. The intruder does not just slip in. He brings a whirlwind of violence. Vincent, a 60-year-old pizzeria owner, is shot and killed. Maxine is subjected to unspeakable torture before she, too, is murdered. The killer takes his time. He rummages through the house, stealing valuables, but leaving behind something far more disturbing. At the crime scene, detectives find a symbol drawn in lipstick, a pentagram. The symbol sends a jolt of ice water through the veins of the investigators. This is not just a burglar who panics and shoots. This is a ritualistic killer, a predator who revels in the fear and the pain of his victims. The media catches wind of the escalating violence. The headlines scream. The public demands answers. Who is doing this? The investigation falls squarely on the shoulders of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the LAPD. Leading the charge are two detectives who will become legends in the true crime world. Frank Salerno, a seasoned veteran who had famously worked on the Hillside Strangler case, and Gil Carrillo, a younger, sharp-eyed investigator who is relatively new to homicide. Carrillo is the first to start connecting the dots. He looks at the Vincow murder, the Rosemead and the Monterey Park shootings, and the Zazara massacre. He notices a pattern of entry, a specific caliber of weapon, and a sheer randomness that is utterly baffling. See, most serial killers have a type. They target specific demographics: women of a certain age, men of a certain profession. But this killer, he targets anyone. Men, women, the elderly, the young, the wealthy, the working class. His only criteria seem to be an unlocked window or a vulnerable home. And then Carrillo finds a piece of evidence that seems almost too fragile to be important. At the Zazzara crime scene, pressed into the dirt of the flower bed outside the window, is a footprint. It is an unusual print belonging to an Avia aerobic shoe, size 11.5. It is a highly specific, relatively rare shoe. Carrillo meticulously logs the print. He tells his superiors that they are looking for one man, one highly mobile, utterly unpredictable killer. Initially, his theories are met with skepticism. The crimes are too varied, the locations too spread out, but Carrillo holds firm. As spring turns into the scorching summer of 1985, the killer proves Carrillo right. He strikes again, and again, and again. In May, he attacks an elderly couple in Monrovia, murdering the husband and brutally assaulting the wife. He leaves another pentagram drawn in lipstick on the wall. In June, he murders a woman in her sleep in Arcadia. In July, he goes on a terrifying spree, attacking multiple homes in the span of just a few weeks. He murders an elderly woman in Glassell Park, a man in Sun Valley, and attacks a couple in Glendale, leaving them for dead. The city is in a state of absolute panic. Hardware stores sell out of deadbolts and window locks. Gun sales skyrocket. People stop going out at night. The sweltering summer air is thick with paranoia. The media, hungry for a narrative, dubs the unknown assailant the walk-in killer, then the Valley Intruder, before finally settling on a name that will stick: the Night Stalker. The Night Stalker is a ghost. He strikes in the dead of night, leaves behind horrific scenes of violence, and vanishes before the sun comes up. He takes cash, jewelry, and sometimes, sickeningly, he takes nothing at all, killing seemingly for the sheer, twisted thrill of it. He forces his surviving victims to swear allegiance to Satan. He is a walking nightmare, a manifestation of the city's deepest, darkest fears. But even ghosts leave traces. Detectives Salerno and Carrillo are working around the clock. The task force is massive, combing through thousands of tips, interviewing countless persons of interest. The Avia shoe print remains their strongest physical lead, but finding the man who wears the shoe seems impossible in a county of millions. Then, in early August 1985, the Night Stalker makes a mistake. A crucial, arrogant mistake. He strikes outside of his usual Los Angeles hunting grounds, traveling north to San Francisco. He breaks into the home of Peter and Barbara Pan. Peter is murdered. Barbara is severely injured but miraculously survives. At the scene, the detectives find the signature pentagram and the ballistics match. But more importantly, the San Francisco police have a witness. A teenager in the neighborhood noticed a suspicious car prowling streets before the attack. He wrote down the license plate number. It is a stolen Toyota station wagon. The net begins to tighten. A few days later, the stolen Toyota is found abandoned in a parking lot in Los Angeles. The car is treated like a gold mine. Forensics teams tear it apart, dusting every square inch for fingerprints. The Night Stalker has been careful, wiping down the steering wheel and the door handles. But he missed one spot. On the rearview mirror, detectives find a single, partial fingerprint. It is the breakthrough they have been praying for. In 1985, fingerprint analysis is not the instant, computerized process we see on television today. It requires a massive, physical database and painstaking manual comparison. But the LAPD has recently acquired a new, state-of-the-art computer system. They run the partial print through the database. The machine whirs, the screen flickers, and then a match is found. The print belongs to a man with a lengthy rap sheet for minor drug offenses and traffic violations. His name, Richard Ramirez. The detectives pull his mugshot. They look at the dark, unkempt hair, the intense hollow eyes, the rotting teeth. This is the face of the monster. This is the Night Stalker. The task force immediately begins digging into Ramirez's life. They find his dental records confirming his unusually poor dental hygiene, which matches descriptions given by surviving victims. They discover his associates, his habits, but they do not find Richard Ramirez. He has vanished. The police are faced with a monumental decision. They know who the Night Stalker is, but they cannot find him. If they keep the information secret, they might be able to catch him unaware, but if he strikes again, the blood will be on their own hands. The mayor and the police chief make the call. They decide to blow the lid off the investigation. On August 30th, 1985, a press conference is held. The police release the mugshot of Richard Ramirez to the public. They plaster his face on television screens, newspapers, and billboards across the state. They announce his name, his age, and his terrifying moniker. The message is clear. The Night Stalker has a face, and he is a wanted man. Richard Ramirez is completely unaware of his newfound infamy. He has taken a bus out of state to visit his brother in Tucson, but when he fails to connect with his brother, he decides to return to Los Angeles. On the morning of August 31st, 1985, a Greyhound bus pulls into the station in downtown Los Angeles. Richard Ramirez steps off the bus. He is exhausted, strung out, and utterly oblivious to the fact that his face is on the front page of every newspaper in the city. He walks into a convenience store to buy a donut and a soda. He picks up a newspaper from the rack. He looks down, and staring back at him is his own face. The headline screams his identity, the Night Stalker. Panic sets in. He realizes that the woman behind the counter is looking at him. He puts down the paper, her eyes widening in sheer terror. Ramirez drops the paper and runs. He sprints out of the store, his heart pounding. He knows he has to get off the streets, has to find a car, and he has to disappear. He runs blindly, crossing freeways, dodging traffic, heading east into the working-class neighborhoods of East Los Angeles. He is a cornered animal, desperate and dangerous. He runs into a residential neighborhood on Hubbard Street. He spots a woman getting out of her car and lunges at her, demanding the keys. But the woman fights back, and she screams. Her screams alert the neighborhood. This is not a quiet, isolated suburb. This is a tight-knit community, a place where neighbors look out for one another. And today, they're not going to let a stranger terrorize their street. A man named Faustino Pinion, who is working on his car nearby, hears the commotion. He runs over and confronts Ramirez. Ramirez, realizing he is outnumbered, abandons the car and takes off running again. He spots another car, a Ford Mustang, with the keys in the ignition. He jumps in and tries to start it, but the owner, Julio Diaz, runs out of his house and pulls Ramirez right out of the driver's seat. Ramirez breaks free and continues running down the street, but the neighborhood has rallied. A group of residents, armed with whatever they can find, a steel pipe, a wrench, give chase. They pursue the most feared man in America down the hot asphalt of Hubbard Street. Ramirez is exhausted. He turns around to face his pursuers, raising his fists, but he is no match for the furious crowd. One of the residents swings the steel pipe, striking Ramirez in the head. He falls to the ground, bleeding and dazed. The crowd surrounds him, pinning him down. When the police arrive moments later, they are stunned. They have been hunting this phantom for months, utilizing task forces, helicopters, and cutting-edge computers. And here he is, subdued by a group of angry neighbors armed with a steel pipe. As the police handcuff Ramirez and haul him to his feet, the crowd roars. Ramirez, bleeding and battered, looks right at the officer and says, "It's me. You got me." The capture of Richard Ramirez is one of the most dramatic and chaotic conclusions to a manhunt in American history. But the capture is only the end of the first act. The trial that follows will be a circus of the bizarre and the macabre, a media spectacle that will captivate the nation. The trial of Richard Ramirez begins in 1989, and it is unlike anything that Los Angeles courthouse has ever seen. Ramirez, fully leaning into his persona as an agent of evil, treats his proceedings as his own personal theater. He arrives in court wearing dark sunglasses, sneering at the cameras. During his first court appearance, he raises a hand to the reporters, displaying a pentagram drawn on his palm, and shouts, "Hail Satan." It is a chilling, absurd display. The prosecution, led by the brilliant and meticulous Phil Halpin, presents a mountain of evidence. They bring forward surviving victims who point a trembling finger at the man who destroyed their lives. They present the ballistics, the matching Avia shoe prints, the fingerprints, the stolen property found in Ramirez's possession. The case is overwhelming. But the trial is dragged out, marked by delays, dramatic outbursts, and the bizarre phenomenon of murder groupies. Despite the horrific nature of his crimes, Ramirez attracts a bizarre cult following of women who attend his trial daily, writing him love letters and vying for his attention. One of them, a freelance magazine editor named Doreen Leoy, will eventually marry him while he is on death row. It is a staggering testament to the twisted allure of true crime in the dark corners of human psychology. The defense team tries to argue that evidence is circumstantial, that Ramirez is a scapegoat. But the jury is not swayed. After a grueling trial and weeks of deliberation, the verdict is handed down on September 20th, 1989. Richard Ramirez is found guilty of 13 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, 11 counts of sexual assault, and 14 counts of burglary. He is sentenced to die in the gas chamber. When the sentence is read, Ramirez remains utterly unfazed. He looks at the journalist in the courtroom and delivers a quote that will send shivers down the spine of the public for decades to come. Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland. Richard Ramirez is sent to San Quentin State Prison, where he will spend the rest of his life on death row. For over 2 decades, he sits in a small cell, appealing his sentences, giving occasional chilling interviews and maintaining his dark persona. But the executioner never comes. On June 7, 2013, the Night Stalker's reign finally officially ends. He dies not in the gas chamber, but in a hospital bed in Marin County, succumbing to complications from B-cell lymphoma. He is 53 years old. The story of Richard Ramirez is a descent into the absolute darkest depths of the human experience. It is a story of a broken childhood, the toxic influence of violence, and a complete terrifying absence of empathy. It is a reminder of a time when a city was held hostage by fear, and of the incredible, painstaking police work and sheer community bravery that finally brought the nightmare to an end. The legacy of the Night Stalker is one of enduring terror. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that monsters do not always hide under the bed or lurk in the woods. Sometimes, they walk right through the front door. Thank you for exploring this dark chapter of history with me. If you want to dive deeper into the unsolved mysteries, the hidden details, and the shocking truths of the true crime world, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment on what cases we should cover next, and make sure to leave a 5-star review on our podcast channels. Until next time, stay safe out there.